Okay, what's going on? Good evening. Today is Thursday, August 20th, 2026. What we're going to be looking at is a little bit of Wednesday's position, as well as obviously today's position, and then what, I kind of expect based on, price action and what we're seeing here for NQ going into the end of the week. Okay. And so, one thing I would do want to bring up really quick, I just want to see where we have on the Discord and the pre-market outlook. Okay. Dollar index again. Okay, so on the Discord, let's look here really quick what we had for the idea. Okay, I actually want to bring it over here so I can pan over. Okay, so on the Discord, we had dollar index. Okay, looking at dollar index this morning, it still looks relatively weak overall, but we're approaching an area where that could begin to change. When you look left to get right, price is trading inside 98.70, the fair value gap to FEG, and beginning to show some signs of strength. Okay, so let's look at that really quick. Let's look at dollar here, what we were looking at. And so we ended up getting this massive push lower, right? So this was that capitulation that I really was wanting to see like a little bit earlier in the week, like closer to Wednesday. I thought we were gonna get that close, like or yeah, Monday or Tuesday. I thought we were gonna get that, and then we ended up getting it here yesterday being Wednesday, and then today was just kind of just up and down. Okay, it just kind of went down, came back up, just at the relative same area. So these lows that were created back in May 2026, right? I thought they could be a target going forward in the future when you're looking at like the weekly discount demand zones, 97.50. And so key levels on dollar for me today, we're going to be 98.70 is the current area of interest. So we'll go back to that. Right, so 98.70 is the current area of interest. 99 is the potential short covering target. Right, so if they actually push above, essentially what they ended up doing was just pushing above the highs here. Okay, so I'm looking at the far right screen. This is the daily in the middle, and then the intraday is more here. But essentially, all they did was just push higher here. So they went this down, came up, and closed higher and started showing signs of strength. Okay, and so for me, that's essentially what I was wanting to see since we had already kind of made a low and a V-shaped recovery at 98.70 in the overnight. And so as we go forward, going into tomorrow's close, what I'm really looking for is can dollar reach above these highs here, like the 98, 95, 98, 99, just whole level, and then reach up for like these previous lows here and this area here at 99.150, or excuse me, 99.15. So if they were to do that, that would that would be interesting, depending on what we see. Okay, but we ended up seeing a very bearish day, based on I think this hitting this area of liquidity, which was like the 98.74s, and individuals kind of like covering that position from that V-shaped recovery started showing strength on dollar in the right area, right? Because that's the area that we essentially wanted to see. So when you go back to futures, what we wanted to see for futures, okay, NQ futures overnight capitulation. Overnight, we talked about how futures pushed higher and then completely fell off a cliff. Now ask yourself what eventually has to happen for those shorts to realize their profits. They have to buy to cover, right? So this is a typical play that we look for, either manually hitting the buy button or having a resting buy limit to take profit. The that makes the areas underneath. Excuse me. Yeah, that makes the areas underneath current price extremely important coming into equities open. Okay, so NQ key levels today were the 29,300. Let's go over to that here really quick as well. 29,300. So you can see here, like this was the level like I was talking about here, just coming below these lows on the 4 hour and just coming below this daily area. Okay. Go back to here. H4, we had identified the 29,239s. Okay. So essentially what that was for me, when you're looking for those 239s, okay, 239s were here. So just getting below that wick low, and then my overall target was to see if we could come fill the FEG at the 29,189s, which we haven't delivered yet. Okay, but we did get very close to that today. But I'm gonna go over the order we took yesterday and today. And so that's what I was wanting to see here. Like I said, the 29,189 fair value gap underneath the old lows is one of my biggest areas of interest today, and really just going forward. Okay. A personal position, I was able to find a long underneath the 29,300 and secure a 1 to 3R. then move the remaining position to break even for my entry. So I was able to essentially, let me go down here, okay. I was able to find an entry pre-equities open, okay. So equities open was up in here. Or, excuse me, let me go back. We're gonna go back to today's, and then we'll go back through yesterday's at the end. Okay, so we're gonna focus on today, which is Thursday the 20th. Okay, now before equities open, there was a position here that I was looking at. So we had completely fell off a cliff. When you look at a 4-hour time frame, so I'm gonna go back to this 4-hour here. When you go look at a 4-hour time frame, and I'm gonna take some of this stuff off. Okay, when you look at a 4-hour time frame, we were coming down into this wick low, which was those 29,239s. Okay, and so we had delivered the 300 level. As you can see, this is 300s right here. We had delivered the 300s. This was 5 a.m. candle going into the 9 a.m. Okay, and so you can see we had already started to deliver those lows or get very close, or we delivered them in that candle. So we hadn't even had equities open until we delivered that area. Okay, or before we delivered this before equities open. Excuse me. So when you go back to the intraday, so you can like really see it. This was right here at the bottom. You can see it's 7:30 going into 7:15 or 7:45, and then 7:45 going into 8 a.m. So as price started to break structure down here inside this 5-minute area, I like to take trades in the first 15 minutes of the hour, the last 15 minutes of the hour. And then the context for me was when I took this trade was it was 7:40 going into 7:45. I liked the area of where we were. I liked the context of this low, going down to this low. So it was like pretty far push past the most previous low. And then I was looking left to get right on higher time frames, and we had drilled the top end of the imbalance, right? So we had come down to right before the area that I really want on that key level. As you can see, we didn't reach down. And so I wasn't going to take that on futures because I always like to wait to take those on stream. So I ended up taking this here. It looked like this, okay? 3 yard position. I sent it to the Discord. Was taking it on personal and then ended up cutting most of the move off in this area here, and then it ran and ended up delivering its TP for the 15-minute FEG, right? So this right here, this is just a 15-minute fair value gap that I was targeting for the farther move after it gave me my 3R. Yeah. And so going into New York, okay, for Thursday the 20th, okay, of August, we were already kind of seeing that type of move. Okay, so let's go back to the Discord here. And so basically what I said here is now the focus shifts towards what happens at equities. If they come back and run the overnight lows, I would anticipate the possibility of rolling down towards 29,189, which is just that higher time frame FEG, right? From there, I want to watch closely for another response after stops are taken. That could be where we begin seeing shorts cover and potentially get another capitulation style bounce. Okay, so bigger picture, bearish scenario, right? We also cannot ignore the weekly and daily structure. There is still room for futures to roll over towards 50% of the higher time frame range if the intermarket conditions begin lining up. Things I'm watching, okay? And we'll talk about these really quick, but I want to show what I'm talking about there as well, okay? When you're looking at the range, okay, and what we're talking about here is I know I have a lot of stuff on the Christmas tree of this, okay? But when you're looking at the range here of the daily bars here, if you look on the left, okay, up to this area here on the high, this is a range, right? So this 4-hour low to this 4-hour high is a range. Now, if you can identify this from the perspective of a buyer, okay, which these lows they created back on the 29th of July, 2026 were terrible. Like they were just it was a candle that just opened and went 500 points, okay? But you can expect something like that from like the lows. But it was just still crazy to see, in just 4 hours that price went from, let's look at it really quick. Take this one off here really quick. In 4 hours, I'm looking at this candle right here, okay? That candle went like 400, 500 handles. It was crazy, okay? Now, how I'm evaluating this range is from this swing low to the swing high, okay? Now, as we attack towards other liquidity spots, so what I mean by that, okay, is like areas like here, okay? So if you're looking on the right side, right, for a second, I'm talking about this FEG imbalance, right? 29,189s. Now, fix your eyes to the left side on the daily really quickly. And now our next focus would be this daily low, okay, that aligns with this 4-hour. If you fix your eyes to the right now, fair value gap, okay? Sitting right here pretty much at the 28,700 to 29,800 zone, okay? So if we do roll to the downside, those are areas I will be targeting. Is basically the 50% range of the higher time frame. So that's what I mean by that when I'm saying there's still room for us to roll over towards, okay? Let me go back and just kind of show that. There's still room for us, where I'm saying here, okay, to roll back over to 50% of those higher time frame ranges, okay? And so let's go over the position, okay, that we ended up taking today at the New York Open, okay? So one thing I will say about today is they did present quite a bit of 1 to 3 opportunities. So you had to really be in a position to where, if you won one and then price didn't continue to go and break 15 5-minute structure, then you had to, accept what they had given you. Excuse me, I'm gonna move this really quick. This was the original New York low at one point, but I'm gonna move it for now. So I will say that, okay, like there was definitely opportunities that presented based on the price and time and things that we like. I'm gonna move these from the session as well. Okay, now in the equities open, it was a little bit tricky because, like I said, that the pre-equities pretty much gave, I think, the best position. But then when we got the equities open, we did have individuals in our Discord that actually were able to take the buy. It was a pretty good buy up to just deliver in the very first candle here, as you can see, 8:30 going into 8:45, to go up and deliver that fair value gap in just 3 5-minute candles, right? So we were looking at this idea, okay, of them to come to deliver this liquidity right here from the equities open, which is here, okay. And so when you go and break that down to like a 1 minute, 5 minute, to like how we like to look for it, for me, we had already had a pretty good week, right? And then I had already played my personal position pre-equities. But we've had a pretty good week on stream, so like it didn't really make sense to me to come in and really just like force any positions or like go heavy volume today and like give back to the markets. And so at the equities open, I did like how they opened up this price. Now this first 5-minute candle, as you can see here, 8:30 to 8:35, it explodes up and fills that first fair value gap at 29,400. Now the one thing I'd say about the taking a trade on this, okay, would have been difficult based on how I personally look at it, because it would have been hard for me to frame anything unless I was framing the 1 minute, okay. Now the 15-minute did look. Let me look at it one more time. The 15-minute did set up pretty nicely though too. So like at one point, all you could see before equities open was this, okay. And so you had a good 15-minute body close, a sign of strength inside of an area that I wanted to see. So you could have possibly framed it, but I just would have, it felt forceful. Like I just didn't feel like I, personally wanted to force something like that. If it was a little bit lower, like that original area, then I definitely would have liked it. Okay. Now going back into that 5 and 1 minute, you've got the very first minute print. Okay. So like at one point, all you could see was 8:30, 8:30 going into 8:31, and that was the close, and then 8:31 candle happens. Okay. And so right here, when you see that, now we go back to that and look at the other minutes. Okay. Now, that was the first candle, okay? And it was just, that was, I mean, they ran out people who were trying to sell, like they just completely ran out people there very quickly, okay? They just put their stops in like those 376s. But then the next candle, 31 going into 32, okay? This one candle right here, okay? Immediately blast up pretty much to supply. So like what we're looking at here, okay, is this candle on the 1 minute. And then what you're looking at on the 5, right, is this. Okay, so I'm showing you guys the 1 minute explosion candle there, but then where you want to be looking, okay, is inside the 5-minute supply. Last up candle before down move becomes a level of supply where small time frame players are going to exit, and you can expect market structure shifts back down before going through these levels. Okay, and so price explodes in that one candle. Okay, I think it was about almost 100 points. Okay, and so you would have, me personally, I would have been out of the I would have been out, right, with 3R, and just that one candle. So it doesn't, to be able to frame this. Okay, the only way you take this trade, most likely for most people, okay, because there's nowhere on the 5-minute, if that makes sense the way I teach it. Okay, there's no way to get in this trade unless you take it after it starts going up, and it's going to be above old structure, so it's just going to be forceful. There's no way, you know what I mean? Like I said, unless you're taking it off that 1 minute area, which, like I said, to me at an equities open is just difficult. You know what I mean? But the 5-minute last little down candle does align. That 15 we said does look good. And so if you take it and you take the setup, you just got to know, you're in the first 5 minutes of the opening range and you got to manage it accordingly. But there was a beautiful little setup if you look at it like that, okay, to then go higher. But what I like to see, right, with true mitigations is I don't have to force it. I want to see it do that. And then I want to see a move come back, right, inside that same area at the right time and give me a chance to attack people who shorted just recently, okay? So that was a good move. Now, the move that we ended up taking on the stream, okay, was this one here. So what I ended up liking was we ended up getting a 5 minute sign. This was 9 a.m. Okay, so like after the equities open, just everything kind of like rallied up. I didn't see a buy position, and then price came back down. Okay, it was like 9 to. Actually, I was really looking at like 850 going into 855, and we were looking for the 5 minute sign of strength. So we didn't get the 5 minute sign of strength until 9:05 to 9:10, which is one of our favorite times to play the markets. Now, in this situation here, let me make sure and check. I believe I ended up hitting break even on this trade. Okay, so I ended up trying to play this trade. We'll fix our eyes here to the left side. At one point, all we could see was this. Okay, and so we didn't have a clear sign of strength on this trade. And then the next candle, I believe, was the sign of strength. Okay. But as we're on stream and we're talking about this, okay, the only thing we can see, what time was this? Was 9:05 to 9:10. The only thing that we could see was the 1 minute area was like holding inside of this zone. And then I was looking for a potential push. If I said basically if it goes through the New York Open, like we were watching that 5 minute close, and I said if it goes through the New York Open, I want to play longs, right, up to this spot. So I want to be able to get my order back below. So either below New York or at, right? And I want to make sure that my order is inside my 5 minute reference point, right? My 5 minute reference point is here, right? I want my 1 minute order to be inside that candle, okay? And so how that has to look when you look at it from this perspective, let me kind of pull this over here on the 1 minute. So we're looking just at that area because we're looking just at this area at this moment. Like this price right here pretty much is irrelevant. Let's do this here. So everything on the 1 minute on the right of this is pretty much irrelevant. I'm basically looking at, okay, there's a low, price ends up goes and closes higher, and it's going and testing below New York Open at the right time for me to basically attack individuals who are shorting, okay? And that's basically what I'm looking at here. Now, when you go and you look back at, like I said, at that 5 minute, what ends up happening, okay? What ends up happening is the price ends up closing bullish, and then that was supposed to be the signal to play the move that comes back down. And then what does it do? It comes down, and all the stops ends up running the stops. Now, my bias was still at this point to possibly see the 15 and 5 area hold because I was looking at specifically if you look to your left, the left side here, I was looking at this candle here as acting as like a level of possible demand and like fair value gap here in the 29,300s. And until I seen bodies closing lower, like this one here at 10:30 going into 10:45, then I was essentially still seeing us moving through the New York high and possibly back up to 29.5 before rolling lower. Okay. And so now when you go back to the next entry that I was able to take, so it was a scratch, excuse me. I took a scratch and then I was able to take another two 1-3s that I partialed on two of them. Okay. So scratch was here because I ended up, aggressively taking that with the candle hadn't closed yet. I aggressively took it as it was pushing through that New York with a 20 handle risk. Okay. Now we ended up getting the right time. Now, one thing we've been noticing with data is that price has been moving around like 925 going into 930 and like shifting and going in the direction that we want. And so when you look at the price here, 915 going into 930, all you could essentially see at one point on the 5 minute was this. Okay, so it starts to look, pretty bearish. You start to think from the bias of like if you took those 745 going into 8 a.m. buys before the breakout, you're starting to think like, okay, I'm break even. These individuals are starting to think like, oh shit, like if they didn't partial, like I partialed a good amount of this when it rallied up, but individuals who have just been holding on to this, they're getting to a point where they're getting weak-handed and they're wanting to give their order back. Okay, and so what we ended up getting here was we got another explosive candle. And so what I did was here was I realized like, okay, like excuse me, in this area just right here, okay, I'm just trying to make sure I point out the right area. When I was in this area, I needed to wait for the 5 minute close. So what did I do with this one? Okay, I ended up waiting for the 5 minute close. We ended up getting an explosive candle, 925 going to 930, where essentially all you could see at one point was this. Okay, And so I knew a lot of FOMO had come into the marketplace, especially off this 1 minute run. So this 1 minute run is going to be here. Show you guys on the right side here. I'm talking about this run is that 5 minute candle right there. Okay. And so I knew there's a lot of FOMO. I knew people were going to be buying late, right, at the end of the range of this candle. And what I was essentially wanting to see was at this point, if you fix your eyes to the left side, okay, was I wanted to see price come back into my reference point candle, come back below New York open, and then at a 5 minute candle closure, be able to market shift and push our way up to 450s and possibly through the New York shorts high, okay, because that's a good draw on liquidity. Maybe we move to 25 or 29.5, maybe we don't, okay. But that was like, now I'm wanting to see that pullback move, right, based on context, to see something like this to go higher, okay. And so the trade that we ended up calling out next, okay, here on the Discord was we got the push back. So this is 25 going into 30, and then this was 30. This candle here is what I'm pointing to, like this black candle here, okay, was 30 going into 35, and then this was 35 going into 40. Now, me personally, where I started to see this as like a mitigation play, 15.5 setup, I was actually looking at this from that, like I said, that 15-minute perspective, and I was wanting to see possibly, really all we're wanting to see is when this pushed out, could it break that high, right? Because if it could break that high, then that was going to show signs of strength. But I said, if we got to this area, okay, and we couldn't make, like we did here, we ended up making the lower high. Yeah, and it was like shitty on that, but ended up making a lower high, okay, then I said that we probably would roll over, okay? And so, like, that's perfectly fine as long as you're playing at R multiples for things like that to happen, okay? Now, where I ended up taking the entry is I want to take my trade on a trade like this, and I go over this stuff in the Discord, and it'll also be in the course exactly what to look for, okay? But I go over this stuff in the morning, being below 50% of this 5 minute candle here. Price pushes up, price comes back down. Now I want to be buying below opening price, so New York opening price, in bullish conditions to attack higher, right? And so where it ended up, printing a bullish sign was here, 35 going to 36, and then right here, I was wanting to play this same. So I'm looking at that 5 minute here, okay, and I was wanting to play this 1 to 3 up to this zone. Now, as you can see, I want it to show up on both. Excuse me, really quick. Okay, so I was looking here, okay, and I'm going to show you what I was looking at on 1 minute at the same time, okay. Been noobing it up. No, we were looking for a 1 to 3. We're only looking for 1 to 3 in these situations, okay? So what I said was, right, I got this sign of strength candle here, which was at 35 going to 36, and then bang, right, buying the New York Open with a 20 handle risk, right? And I was just shooting to get back above these old highs, and then potentially, okay, back above this high here, okay? And so what ended up happening to me for this trade here was I was able to, I had 4 contracts on the trade, right, at base, right? So at the base, I had 4 contracts. I was able to cut 2 and go break even on 2, okay? And so up in this area here, I ended up trailing risk, and then it broke this low of this 392s for 2 of the contracts, and I was in below 50s, like right at 50s, okay? So let's look here really fast. And I'll look and see where I actually posted some of those. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So this was the 9 a.m. Area, okay? And so this was the area, like I said, where we ended up taking it, and then I was able to close down 2 of the contracts and then be able to manage. Okay, so that's basically what my whole day kept coming down to, was like playing positions and having to manage. Okay, and so that was the first one that we played, which I showed that was the 9 a.m. That was this one here. Okay, let me look and see where we have the other positions. Okay, so this would have been okay. So here we go. Okay, so now so this is what happened, right? So price closed higher here, which is exactly what we want to see on that mitigation play, FOMO play on small time frames, right? Then price rolled back down into that 50% area, being below New York Open, right? 29,350s. And then price responded really well in that 1 minute candle right there at 36 going to 37. And bang, we buy New York Open, okay? 20-point risk, 60-point gain, just getting above the structure, okay? Now, I started this one with, like I said, 4 contracts, and then obviously when I pulled 2 of the contracts, It did move me up a little bit, but I do believe my first part of my entry was at 350 because that's just something that I actually like really watch for myself. But this was a really, really good entry. Now I had a small loss. My small loss on that original trade at the 905s was 4 contracts times uh so that's $8 a point, so it's $160 loss. And then right here I was able to basically cover at this point, like I had just covered the position, whatever 219 times 2 is, right? So I was able to cover that 160 loss for sure, and then I was getting ready to go risk off on the remainder of this trade to see if we were going to continue through the equities through the equities liquidity. Okay. And so that's where we're at right now. That's where we're looking at. Okay. And so played that position up. As you can see, that price ended up going up, doing the same thing. Okay. And then falling back over because 450s was acting as a really, really good level of resistance and level of supply. Right. And it's also just an area that on higher time frame, I felt like if we couldn't break through those levels, then we were going to kind of roll over. Okay. And so that was the position for today, right? Tried at 905, then tried here, and then that was it. Okay. And so didn't get the push that I wanted to see. Like I wanted to see the break through the level, right? Like if we would have got like on that second one here, would have stayed, did like this, and then like I think if like this push would have actually extended through here, that would have been a lot more confirmation that we could have definitely ran 4 shorts on that position. And then really quickly, we only have like a minute left, so I do want to go ahead and go over yesterday's positions as well, because yesterday was such an amazing day. I'm actually at a point where like I'm like, do I really want to do yesterday's positions yet? Because yesterday's was such an amazing day that like we had the sells down through the London lows liquidity. We waited on low data to be delivered. 5 minute sign of strength, 9:15 to 9:30, same thing. This was that 9:20 to 9:25, and then 9:25 to 9:30, we banged the trade to the upside for 5 plus R on the day. Okay, and so like this is a really good play. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and drop a video over higher time frame RSV for this one. Okay, for a bounce play. So we'll just stick with what we ended up getting today, and then I'll go over what we are expecting for tomorrow. Okay, but be on the lookout for that one being like an example day of RSV. Okay, let's take a look at the price for the overnight NQ here. So for me, going into a Friday, price, when you look at it from the perspective of like higher time frame, right? It seems more than likely like there's only a couple things that can happen going into tomorrow. This is the previous day low, 29,000, let's just say 200s to round it off. This is the previous day high, okay? If price has, the better advantage, especially when I was showing you guys like this is the low, this is the high to move down to the 50%, then we're going to focus on this massive imbalance in this 28,800 level if price can continue to move down. Now, one other thing you want to be looking at, okay, is going to be this weekly daily, okay? And I talked a lot about this weekly daily. Being an area that you'd want to see price get down to is going to really be that 28.8. Why? Because that's also a lot where that weekly discount demand zone aligns on that daily. So right inside that daily fair value gap, we could see price really have a massive response. I'm also going to be watching the 50% of this fair value gap, so like 29,000 up to like 29,000 like 2. I do want to see, but I want to see how it's going to align with a higher time frame. Okay, because if you guys really look at this, the play that was really like a monster play for me this year was when we came down into this fair value gap here, the 23.4s or whatever the price was on the contracts at that time. And then we were able to long positions through those highs, and then we just had the most epic run ever on equities right after we crossed this high. Like most individuals I know took buy positions on these 3 weeks. They got through this area. They cut their trades down. Like if you're trading CFD swings, and then these next few weeks it was just one. So when we took it inside the demand, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 6 weeks, right? Almost like literally, yeah, it was almost 6, 7 weeks of just straight upside, just straight rockets to the upside. Okay, and so we'll see. We'll kind of be watching this area here, okay? And then on daily, okay, what I'm really looking for is like that FEG area, and then what's going to happen around 29,200 in the overnight. So I hope they sell off in the overnight so we can catch easy bounce plays. I also do like really good shorts. One thing that I kind of made a mistake on this week is on CFD, guys. I had shorts. I don't know if you guys are in the Discord, you would know. Okay. But the shorts that I had were above market open. Okay. So I had shorts above those 30,300s where I had just basically a runner. Now, when price delivered, so I'll kind of show this here. When price delivered the 4 hour low, if you sold anything in that zone, you were up like over 500 plus points, and I had cut it down to like the smallest amount of volume that the broker was allowing for what I had chosen. And so yeah, to watch this thing probably crater down tomorrow to 28,000, or at least equilibrium, FEG, like I said, 28,800 would be pretty good. Okay. Now we'll kind of look at a couple things here as well. I do want to see if oil can continue to hold inside this zone, or do they have the juice to just really pump this, up? Is there going to be some kind of, news release or something that comes out that, makes the price of oil also rally really quickly and makes shorts have to cover? Okay, that's something I'll be on the lookout for tonight. I'll be setting some alerts here on key levels and yesterday's highs and lows. Okay, so I want to know where price is going. I'm not going to talk too much about QQQs or the stocks tonight. Um, Overall markets, I will say though, okay, when you look at all these from a whole, okay, YM, ES, and Q, it seems like obviously we can make that move down. So let's take a look at dollar index. So what I'd be looking at for tomorrow in dollar index, with this being yesterday's price, yesterday's lows, yesterday's highs, I want to see what the overnight presents and then see if they start to rally price back up above 90 to 99.20. Because that's another reason why we could start to roll over. Or do they start to roll over here on dollar to lower levels, 98.25, right? And then that's what kind of gives us the juice to kind of pump up. Let me take this off. Pump up before we fall. So I'd rather see, like I said, tonight, I want to see if they can fall into this area that I've wanted all week, which is going to be those 189s. And then once we get into these zones, we'll start to identify what's going to happen next as we push lower on the higher time frame ranges. Okay. But hope that helps out with the positions from the New York Open. Just understanding we took a pre-equities one, and then I thought New York was. When you go back to New York, I thought this, like looking on the right screen, I thought this was very barcodey, especially inside of this candle that I like to use as a reference. Okay, I thought it was pretty barcodey, and it just was obviously filling, fair value gaps inside. If you look at like a 1 hour here, it was just filling the 1 hour fair value gaps in the 450s, 444s, and then making its way lower. Okay, but yeah. So thought that was barcodey. I thought there was pretty good idea. Okay, like on that 15.5 we talked about, which was this one in here, and then there was one later in the day. Oh yeah, that was later in the day, 10:45. I think I talked about that in the Discord. Let me check really quick, because I'm pretty sure I did talk about 10:45 inside the Discord. No, I didn't. But looking at the looking at this area, I'll just go over this really quick at the end here as well. Now, criteria, right? I like to shut down the machine around 11:15 a.m. Central Time Zone. So as price was selling off, this was 10:30 going into 10:40, right? 10:40 going into 10:45, and then 10:45 going to 10:50. All you could see was this. Okay, so all you had to work with was this. Now, This is what I was talking about. I'm glad I went back to this. Okay, I was saying that my swing trade that I basically just went break even on after partialing up when it was drawing on liquidities and hitting the TPs. Um, I said, okay, they've come back for these individuals. Okay, they've come back for these individuals, guys. I want to look for longs again. Okay, through these highs. Reason being though was because, guys, when this candle printed here, this was insane, guys. And I gotta go back through the recording and look where it said this, but um as price is going through where is that at? So coming back over here, okay? As price is coming down here, Top Step, the people on Top Step, okay? They were aggressively shorting, but they weren't aggressively shorting until here, like this candle here. They were aggressively shorting down to 29,300. Now, as I'm seeing that, okay, just someone who watches structure every day, and I know news by tops and sell bottoms. I knew that this was a low. I knew this was our current high, and I considered this as like more of like an area where if you take a sell, it's going to be a lot more aggressive for you to take. because it's a higher low. Like until they actually broke lower, it's kind of like you have no idea based on how price was formed inside this little fair value gap in here. Okay, and that's 7:30, 7:40, like 8 a.m. time. And so what they do, right when Top Step people started giving out shorts at 29.3, and this is just typical retail stuff, right? They ran their stops out. Okay, and so I thought 10:45, even if you waited for the 10:45 to 50, and you weren't able to get, an entry, like let's say if you weren't able to take it, which I thought was, if you took it right on this next candle, right, and was using a 20 handle risk, I thought this was a pretty freaking good setup, okay? Because I was looking for it to just not, I wasn't looking for it to home run. I'm just looking for it to give me 3 times my risk, right? I'm looking for price to get back up into. Okay, I'm looking for price to get back up into these supply candles where we know buyers on small time frames are going to exit. I'm looking here on the right side. Okay, and so when you're taking a trade like down here, like this at 10:45, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the liquidity that's resting. If you're looking to the left here on the 15-minute window, you're looking for the New York highs, right? That 450 zone. Um, and you're looking for the fair value gaps inside of there to be delivered. So you can see right here, right? 11:45 going to 11:50 a.m. Okay, price delivered into the fair value gap, failed to go higher. 80 level algorithmically rolls over. Okay, because we're bearish, which is fine. Okay, so I did take positions on this on my personal. I was looking for, like I said, once we broke past the 3R zone, because it did get a little tricky. Where I took it on personal was down here. Where I took it on futures, okay, was we got the 5 minute sign of strength and I had a target. Okay. Now, this is something I specifically do that helps me identify my target and just define my edge. But 10:45 being inside the execution window, a signal being presented, I want to know where those shorts have their resting liquidity, right? So I was looking at like this. Now, the timing right here was 10:45, so it was a good timing. Now, another thing was when we came into 11:10 to 11:05, excuse me, 11:10 to 11:15, price started to print lower. So essentially, all you could really work with was this. Okay, as I was like closing out the session for the day. Okay, so there's not really much to work with. It looks like it's rejecting the area, even though the signal has presented. It's not looking as if it wants to go stronger yet. Okay. Now, in this next candle, okay, you get this type of print. Now, this was 11:15 going into 11:20, okay? Now, in futures, when this was looking this specific way, the 11:15 candle going into 11:30 extends up, okay? And so for me, all I could see was what you're seeing here, okay? And then I want to go show you what I could see on the 15 where my eyes were basically looking at, okay? Oops, I don't know what happened there. Okay, so on the 15, this is what you're working with. Okay, when you look at the bodies, if you need to use line graph in the beginning, use line graph. Okay, to see. But when you're looking at the body closures of candles, like I do, okay, here and here, these are higher lows. Okay, and so in this area, once price started to pick up, I like plays when they're inside a 15-minute demand, and there's a 5 minute play as well. Now, looking at this, I was looking at the 340s, the opening of the 340s, okay, and then having a 20 handle risk, okay, and then I was looking for price just to get to pretty much where it did, okay, and then go higher. So what happened for me on this last trade, for the futures, CFD ended up delivering a nice little profit, and then my futures position, and I was already up like maybe $100 and some across the accounts, okay, at this point, I ended up taking this one, I ended up delivering the 3R like zone, okay? And then I was able to, it came so close to my TP, and then I ended up going break even on this one before it rolled over. So I was really upset that, because of where I had the entry, my TP was set a little bit higher than where that fair value gap area was for the full 1 to 3. And then we got the exhaustion candle here at 12 going into 12:05. And that alone will let me know if I'm past 1 to 2 on the setup that I don't really need to expend any more dollars to figure out if it's going to work. Okay. And so that's how that ended up playing out. Same type of situation. Okay. It went up and then rejected after it got 60 points in profit. But where did it reject? Algorithmic 380 level. and then price rolled over. Obviously, I was done for the day because if I don't get the break of structure or the full 5 hour push on the move, or just something that that goes higher, then I'd know that price was going to continue to roll over potentially on the higher time frames. Okay, so let's see here really quick. I don't know how much of that I was on the far monitor on the ending part, so I know that I got a good amount of the other stuff. So uh, I will go back and watch over that to really go in depth if I didn't really have it on that screen at the end there. Let me check here really fast. I can see. Okay, so I'm not really for sure if I had it on there, so I'll just go over it very quickly. It's just a recording. Okay, I was talking about the 1045 spot. Okay, I said basically it come down, it had made a higher low, right? Like I said, if you're looking at price and you're kind of looking at from that perspective and like body candle closures, I was looking at this as like higher low. And so timing type of trade, right? Individuals were on TS, right? Like I was telling you guys here, TS was coming in and they were shorting down this position. Okay, like once price was already lower, they were already like they were trying to short it as it was coming back to where I had that original order, and I knew that if they weren't going to take that low, that there could be a slight bounce off the market and maybe even back through the New York highs. And so when you look at it from this perspective, we had 1045 going into 1050. And then we had the next candle that breaks higher. Now, where I was talking about where I took the entry and was like looking at this was on futures. I took it up where I'm going to show, and then on CFD, I had taken it here and was trying to take it a little bit higher. And so we had our target identified. Okay, we had our 5 minute sign of strength at the right time, and then I wanted to identify a 15 and 5 area that seemed like it was going to be giving a good area to play. When I'm looking at this, I'm just kind of going back over it quickly. On the 5 minute, I'm looking here at this candle here, okay? And on the 15 minute, at this same area that we're looking at currently, I'm looking at this candle, okay? And so these are the same areas if you can see. And so as we were starting to, this was 11:15. What I was talking about here was there really wasn't much to work with at one point, okay? And I don't know if I went over this part. I'm trying to make sure I went back over it. There wasn't much to work with other than the fact that the 15 minute had made the higher lows and there were still signs that the New York shorts were at the low end of the day and there was a great target to the upside. Okay. So the next candle right here, okay, based on where it was on the 15 and how it was starting to start showing strength, this is what made me decide in this area, okay, on futures that it was a good time to buy this position for a possible 1 to 3. Now, did I think I was going to beat the market? No. I just wanted to see if I could get 3 times my risk on the setup and possibly push to these next areas of liquidity. Now, I had already had one scratch on futures, right, on the stream, which that was 905. I showed here. We caught half of a 3R here when it partial. We were able to partial the move when it pulled back here. We played it up, we partialed, and then it came back, okay, to our entry. And then I played this one on futures, okay, and this one ended up going break even. So that's where I was trying to get like my cycle down too, because I had my personal accounts where I took one here, and then when it finally came back and I partialed out all these, it came back again, and I took essentially the same price, okay, same price on the CFD to try to swing that position higher, and then I took the futures position here, okay, and so it looked really good when you look at like a 15.5. I want to show that really quick. Okay, like based on the location and based on the way I teach it. Okay, so 1 to 3. So the 1 to 3 did deliver. And then what I was saying here was based on where my entry was on this setup, the 1 to 3 was just slightly because of where I entered. Okay, so I believe I entered in the 327s, 326s. It was slightly above wherever I had entered. So I gotta see exactly where we entered. I know we entered right here on this 15 minute, like inside the candle, like this. And so it came very close to pushing right to my 3R with full volume, and then we got the 5 minute exhaustion candle, like I was saying on that one part, which we were on the other side, the other higher time frame, and then we ended up going break even, and the price came back and rolled. Okay, so we don't need a lot to figure out if it's not going to work. We want to see a couple things happen, which is volume kick in. We want to see the structure break, and we want to see shorts cover quickly. Okay, and so No, it was kind of a lot. Like I said, I'm going to be making more of like a higher time frame video that goes with yesterday's price because, like I said, we sold down and we bought up, and so we'll see what we get going forward. And I did go over the higher time frame. So with that being said, I know there's quite a bit, but I appreciate you. And if you guys have any questions, DM me. Make sure and if you haven't had a chance, join the free Discord. There's going to be a lot of cool things on the way, especially when it comes to the blueprint and the understanding of how we do everything that I do. Okay. So I appreciate you again. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.